Alright guys, welcome to checking out the third episode in the video series where we are comparing all the Dreamcast and PS2 games that released for both systems. New equipment and new cables to get pretty much the best video out of these systems as of today. More info about that in the description. I'm also gonna link the first two episodes in the description if you wanna go check those out first. But now let's jump into the first game, which is Craxy Taxi. Okay, Craxy Taxi, and right away here in the intro video I think it's pretty clear to see which system looks way better here. Take a look at it yourself. Yeah, as you can see, the PS2 image is way softer than the Dreamcast, and this is mainly because the PS2 game runs 480i resolution while the Dreamcast runs 480p. Yeah, we're gonna give this game comparison pretty short because there's not too much differences other than the Dreamcast being way sharper here. But yeah, let's move on to the main menu and take a look at the gameplay a little bit. Okay, so here in the main menu you can see the options you get are pretty much identical between the versions. So we're just gonna move on to the arcade mode and pick the 5-minute mode just for this video, but you could play with the arcade rules if you wanted to, or whichever you want, but we're just gonna go for 5 minutes in this video. So here again you can really see how much sharper the Dreamcast image is, while the PS2 looks very soft. Okay, so here both look very similar, but the Dreamcast is a lot sharper. But if we zoom in and take a look at this fence, on the Dreamcast there's a point where it loses some quality, while on the PS2 it pretty much stays the same all the way through, so that's pretty interesting. Okay, let's take a look at the gameplay here, and first we're gonna slow down the footage and take a look at the smoke effect. On the Dreamcast it's a lot more noticeable, but also it's way more pixelated, as you can see here. Okay, let's take a look at a little bit of gameplay here, and both games are very similar, but the Dreamcast is a lot sharper than the PS2, and overall when it comes to gameplay and how it feels to play and control, they're very comparable. The PS2 may have a slight edge in frame rate, but for me the winner definitely is the Sega Dreamcast. It just looks a lot nicer than the PS2 version. So yeah, Sega Dreamcast wins this one, and we are gonna move on to the next game in this video. Actually, just before we move on to the next game, I'm gonna introduce a new feature for this video series where we are gonna be using the PS2 graphics synthesizer mode selector, which is only for the modded consoles or soft modded consoles, which allows us to force the games to 480p. And let's see how it looks if we do it in the Craxy Taxi. And I'm not going to go into too much detail what the GSM is, but if you want to know more about it, definitely Google about it. But give me a feedback, would you like to see these GSM comparisons, or would you prefer if we just keep everything at stock? Okay, so here we have it. On the left we have the stock PS2 footage, and on the right we have the PS2 using the GSM. And tell me in the comments, or do you think the GSM makes a difference here and make it look better than the stock footage? And we're gonna let this play for a while, and then we're gonna put all three of them side by side, the PS2 stock, the GSM, and the Dreamcast. Okay, so here we have the same scene with all three of them side by side. So we're gonna let this play, and then we are gonna move on to the next game. Tell me in the comments how do you think the GSM looks in Craxy Taxi. Okay, so next up we have here Soldier of Fortune. And this one is pretty interesting because both of these versions are ported from the PC version, but they are done by completely different studios. So let's take a look how these teams handled the PlayStation 2 and Dreamcast version. Okay, so right away here in the menu you can see that the both versions look very different when it comes to menu, and the PS2 in terms of graphics of the menu reminds more of the original PC version. And when it comes to difficulties, the Dreamcast only has easy, medium and challenging, while the PS2 has effortless, easy, medium, hard, unfair and custom. So let's jump into the first cutscene here. By the way, the Dreamcast loading time is almost 2 minutes, which is crazy, while the PS2 takes about 10 seconds. Okay, so here the first cutscene. The Dreamcast version in terms of graphics and brightness is actually closer to the original PC version, while the PS2 downgraded some of the lighting and graphics, but because of that they were able to keep some of the details that the Dreamcast version actually had to cut, which we're gonna take a look at here in this video. And the PS2 version is 480i resolution, while the Dreamcast is 480p resolution. So here's the first example of Dreamcast missing some details, even though otherwise it's more in line with the PC version here. One thing you may have noticed already is that the Dreamcast version is missing the character's shadows for some reason. But let's pause the game here for a bit and take a look at the few differences here. Okay, so the PS2 has more small details that are completely missing on the Dreamcast. For example, the phones here, the window, the sign on the door. But then again, when you look at the characters, yeah, just take a look at the details on the pants, on the shoes of the bad guy, the tattoos. Everything looks so much better on the Dreamcast, and also I like the skin color way better on the Dreamcast. But one thing is that is also missing on the Dreamcast is the character's shadows here again. Okay, but let's now let the scene play out. And one funny thing here is that on the Dreamcast version the bad guy misses the shot, while on the PlayStation 2 he blows up the head of the civilian. Okay, so now the rest of the cutscene, we will let that play, and then we are gonna be dropped straight into the gameplay after the cutscene ends. So here we go. Wait a minute. Dreamcast? You're not gonna load again, right? So yes, you actually have to load almost 2 minutes again just to get to play. The Dreamcast loading times are terrible in this game. I'm gonna just use this opportunity to show you the VMU function on the Dreamcast, which is basically just the logo of the game. But let's just skip this loading time and continue the comparison. Okay, so a lot brighter on the PS2, but here we have the same thing going on as in the Quake 3 in the last episode. If you take a look at the wall tiles and the roof tiles, the further you look, the muddier the Dreamcast textures look, but on the PS2 it stays clear all the way through this hallway. Okay, as we start moving here, we can spot a lot of differences right away in the first room here. You can see that the Dreamcast is missing many details here, like these floor panels here, and some additional scenery here as well that's completely missing on the Dreamcast version. Okay, as we start moving down here, the lighting on the Dreamcast version is definitely a lot better than the PS2 version, but the wall on the right on the Dreamcast is completely flat, while the PS2 actually has these details from the PC version, these pillars that the Dreamcast is completely missing, which is pretty interesting. Now we are in a different room, and here once again I think the Dreamcast lighting looks better, but because the PS2 has these animated screens that the Dreamcast is missing, overall I prefer the look on the PlayStation 2 here. But when you shoot the screens, the animation is pretty much the same, but the Dreamcast actually have this lightning around the TVs when you shoot them. That's missing on the PS2. Couple more details here. The trash cans, when you shoot them, the PS2 has an animation for it. The Dreamcast does not. shooting the glass and these toilet sinks here is pretty much exactly the same on both systems. If we just quickly talk about how these games feel to play, I have to say that the PlayStation 2 version feels a lot better to play than the Dreamcast version. The controller on the Dreamcast is not really suited as good on a game like this, and also the PS2 has a dedicated reload button that's missing on the PS2 version. I mean the Dreamcast version, and also the frame rate feels better on the PlayStation 2, so overall the game feels better to play on the PlayStation 2, definitely. Okay, here it's just a couple minutes later, we walk into this hallway here, and both systems actually have to load here. And on the PS2 it takes around 10 seconds again, while the Dreamcast is loading for almost 2 minutes again, which is horrendous. Here at a first glance you could say that the Dreamcast has a way better draw distance here, but actually this section of the game is supposed to have the fog, and for some reason the Dreamcast version removed the fog from this section of the game. So here as we progress through the later section of this level, on the PlayStation 2 you can just keep going, while on the Dreamcast you have this door here blocking your way, and you have to once again load to progress the game. This time around I'm just gonna speed up the footage so you can see how much gameplay you can be having meanwhile the Dreamcast is loading on the PlayStation 2. Okay, so this is now 4 times the speed, and this is just to show you how bad the Dreamcast loading times is. Basically on the PS2 you can finish the whole level while the Dreamcast is still loading. Okay, let's take a look at a couple more things here before we move on from this game. And I was talking about the fog earlier, that it's supposed to be in there, and let's take a look at one example where you can really see that why the fog should be there. Okay, so here as we get to the end of this level, on the Dreamcast version you can see the bad guy is just standing there like an idiot. You cannot see him all the time, while originally it was supposed to be foggy so you can see the bad guy, and once you get closer he will actually move out of the way. But on the Dreamcast, as you can see, he's just standing there and we can even shoot him, but it's not gonna really do anything, so that's pretty funny. Okay, we're gonna take a look at one more cutscene here just to see the graphics side by side, and overall I would say that if you were to watch this video without any voiceover, just the video side by side, probably you would think that Dreamcast version is better because it looks a little bit better in the cutscene. But overall I have to say that definitely the PlayStation 2 version is the better version. I mean, it controls way better than the Dreamcast version, it plays smoother than the Dreamcast version, and it doesn't have those horrendous loading times that the Dreamcast version has. I mean, just to get to this cutscene I once again had to load almost 2 minutes on the Dreamcast just to get to this cutscene, and this cutscene doesn't really last that long, like 1 minute, and once again you have to load around 2 minutes just after this cutscene. But yeah, here I think the Dreamcast really looks a lot better than the PS2 version in terms of graphics, but still I would say that overall the PlayStation 2 version for me is the way better version here. But I guess someone could prefer the Dreamcast just because of the graphics. But yeah, let's move on to a different game. This is already like 10 minutes, so yeah, let's move on to the new game.
As much as I need Hawk on this one, the shop wants...
Okay, next up we have here the last of the more traditional Resident Evil titles, the code Veronica. Well, actually there was the remake of the first game, which was fantastic, and one more game that we don't want to talk about here on this channel. But anyway, this game came out in 2000 for the Dreamcast, and it was later ported in 2001 for the PlayStation 2. Here's also a short video of the VMU function in this game. Basically you see the real-time health status, and this is the first game in this series that actually has a VMU function other than just the logo of the game. Okay, we're gonna jump straight into the intro cutscene, and then we are gonna move on to the gameplay. So yeah, they changed the intro cutscene a little bit, but the menus are basically identical, so let's just move on to the gameplay. Okay, so here as we get to the gameplay, as you can see they look very comparable, but the Dreamcast definitely has a little sharpness edge over the PS2, because the Dreamcast version runs 480p progressive, the US version. Actually, the European PAL version only is 480i, but the PS2 is 480i, so it's interlaced. And even though we are using a great scaler like RetroTink 5X, which has a great de-interlacing, it can't quite match the progressive 480p, which just looks better and sharper, and also better in motion than the 480i. But still, I think this is a way better showing for the PS2 than, for example, the Craxy Taxi, where the sharpness difference was even way more noticeable than in this game.
But you may as well know you have no chance of getting off this.
Okay, so here, as we get to the actual gameplay, the one difference I noticed immediately is the shadow difference. On the Dreamcast it's a lot more darker, which I'm not sure if that is a good thing, but overall both look really good. But let's zoom into the display to see how they compare there. And I was actually very surprised how comparable they look even here. I think the belt buckle looks a little bit better on the Dreamcast, and also the edges of the character look a tiny bit better right here. One area where Dreamcast definitely has the edge over the PS2 is when the game is in motion. Take a look at the character, the scenery, and we even slow down the footage. The PS2 has this almost like ghosting effect, while the Dreamcast looks completely fine. Here, as we get to the outside, I think the Dreamcast just looks a lot more cleaner than the PS2, even though both look pretty good. Textures also look cleaner on the Dreamcast, on the wall and graves and stuff like that. Here, as we get to this cutscene, the PS2 is missing the wire completely here, and also some fire effects in the zombie are different. Let's see. Okay, so here, if you pause the game, you can see that the textures on the wall, on the grave, on the zombie, everywhere are better on the Dreamcast. And also you can see here that the ghosting effect I was talking about right next to the gravestone on the PS2, and this is caused by the 480i resolution, and it's very common on the PS2. And just quickly how 480i, so the interlaced video works, it basically draws only half of the screen at a time. So for example, it first draws the lines 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 and so on. Then it turns those lines off and it draws the lines 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 and so on. But it switches between them so rapidly that the image looks whole all the time. But that is also the reason why you can get artifacts like this in 480i games. Well, I hope that made at least some sense trying to explain it so quickly, but let's let this scene play and then we're gonna move on to the next scene. Here both look pretty good, just standing still, but Dreamcast does have a little bit more detail on the clothes and the character, but both look pretty comparable here otherwise. Here, as we get to this cutscene, everything looks pretty much identical between the systems, but the PS2 has a brighter light on this cutscene, so keep an eye on that. Okay, so here we have one difference between the original Dreamcast version and the PlayStation 2 Code Veronica X version, is the character Steve's hair. This is actually something they changed for the Code Veronica X release of the game. And also the Code Veronica X release of the game includes approximately 10 minutes of new cutscenes that are not available on the original Dreamcast version. Here you can once again see the better textures on the Dreamcast, but let's take a look at a couple more scenes here.
There's an airport around here, and once I find it, I can finally escape from this crazy island. I'll see ya.
Hey, wait up!
Here again in this scene, I think both systems look pretty good, but the Dreamcast definitely is looking more clear here and a little bit better, but I think both systems are a pretty good way to play this game. Okay, we're gonna move on to the last scene here, and I mean overall in this game the Dreamcast has a little bit more clear graphics, which is the reason why I prefer the Dreamcast version, and but then again the PS2 has the added content, so can't really say which is the better version. Also I like the VMU function on the Dreamcast. Okay, so let's take a look at how the GSM, so the graphics synthesizer mode selector, that's a long word, works in this game for the PS2, and then we are gonna wrap up this video. Okay, so for the code Veronica, if you want to use the GSM, you have to enable the skip videos fix from the GSM menu, otherwise it will freeze on the intro cutscene. And I had some problems even when I have this enabled, with some cutscenes not transitioning back to gameplay right away, but it seemed to work alright. So let's take a look at the footage with the GSM. Okay guys, so here we have all three side by side in this very short comparison. So tell me in the comments definitely if you want to see in the future the GSM mode included or not. And yeah, I think the GSM actually does improve a little bit over the PS2 stock, but still can't quite match the Dreamcast. Okay guys, if we slow down the footage here, you can better see the differences. The GSM definitely does improve over the stock PS2. Take a look at the table, the ashtray, the bottle, everything. When the image is in motion, it definitely is looking better than the stock PS2, but it still can't quite match the Dreamcast here. So yeah, you can somewhat improve the image quality in this game with the GSM over the stock PS2, but you may run into some problems with the FMV cutscenes later on in the game, I don't know. But yeah, give me feedback, what do you think about including the GSM footage in these videos. If you really like it, I may actually do it in the future too, but it just adds to my work, so I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about that. But anyways, thank you so much guys for watching this video.
What are you saying?
I hope you liked it. And actually we didn't have the Soldier of Fortune GSM footage because that section of the video was done in a different video editor, and I don't have the original files anymore, so I couldn't do it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching guys, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.